Hello, Thunder Bay. My name's Robert Tuchenhagen and I'm the owner of Superior Home Insulation. Do you have ice damming? Because if you do, we have the solution. In order to reduce the opportunity for ice dams to be created in the first place, there are three issues that we need to address. First of all, insulation. As we all know, insulation slows the transfer of heat. That's why we put it in our attic and in our walls, because we want to keep the heat that the furnace produces for the house in the house as long as possible. So the more insulation you have, the longer it essentially will take the heat to escape from your house. So keep that in mind. When houses were built in the 50s and 60s, they would have had R12 in the attic. If it was built in the 70s or 80s, it would have R20 in the attic. Today the standard is R60. From an ice damming perspective though, we want to slow the transfer of heat as much as we can. Because we want to minimize the temperature in the attic. So that's why the more R value you have in the attic, the better, because it'll slow the transfer of heat into the attic, keeping the attic cooler longer. Number two, ventilation. For that heat that does pass through the insulation and get into your attic cavity, we want to get that heat out of the attic cavity as quickly as possible. Again, ice dams are caused by a temperature in the attic that's too high, that's melting the snow on the roof. So any heat that gets through the insulation, we want to make sure there's sufficient ventilation to get it out of the attic cavity as quickly as possible, thus reducing the opportunities for ice damming. The third issue that needs to be addressed when trying to resolve an ice damming issue is air infiltration. Air infiltration occurs when the warm, moist air inside the house transfers itself into the attic cavity. The best way to explain how this air from inside the house, which is again rich with moisture, gets into the attic cavity is if we look how a new house is constructed today. Today, the house is framed, the wiring's done, the insulation is put in place, then the vapor barrier comes. Any penetrations through the vapor barrier, such as a plumbing stack, for example, or a lighting fixture, need to be sealed properly in order that the vapor barrier is constant and there's no opportunities for air to get again from the heated inside of the house into the attic cavity. When houses were built in the, I guess 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, anything actually previous to 20 years ago, the building code wasn't so stringent with respect to sealing the penetrations through the vapor barrier. So for those older houses, when you go into your attic and you look around the plumbing stack, for example, you may see that it's open from the attic cavity all the way down into the house. Or you look around a masonry chimney, the edges of the masonry chimney, or even a metal chimney, you'll see that there's no vapor barrier on the warm side of the house, keeping the air from transferring up into the attic cavity. So what we want to do is seal it up in the attic. We don't want that warm, moist air from inside the house getting up into the attic cavity around the plumbing pipe or the masonry chimney, because what happens is that warm, moist air, when it gets into your cold attic cavity, will condense, turn to ice, and in the springtime it'll melt, and if there's a lot of it, it could leak into your house. What a lot of people don't realize is that air very easily moves through fiberglass insulation. Just think of your furnace filter, for example. If you have an older style furnace filter, not the pleated paper ones, but just a fiberglass furnace filter, air is moving through it all the time. So we know that air moves through fiberglass. So if you don't seal up around the plumbing stack and the masonry chimney or whatever other penetrations you have through there, that air from inside the house easily pushes up through the insulation in your attic and gets into your attic cavity where we don't want it. So if you're having an issue with ice damming, please give us a call at Superior Home Insulation, 629-8557, or contact us over Facebook. Thank you.